Oh, wonderful. So now we know this meeting's being recorded. Welcome, everyone. Appreciate everyone coming to the Santa Clara River Watershed Committee meeting for today. If you could, like Laura said, put your name and who you represent in the chat box for us to record. And that's where we'll be signing in all of our attendees today. Let's start with committee updates. Does any committee, I can't see a hand, so if someone could help me with that. Or any committee updates that we need? None?
Joined yet? I know he wanted to share something.
Okay.
Let's see him. It's Tom. I don't see Tom on here yet, but is he? Oh, hey Tom, you're muted.
Yep, I'm here.
Hi.
Hello.
Do you have any update for us? No. Okay.
Do you want to share, Tom, about the weed management area funding maybe?
Okay, well, the weed management area thing, we do have a small grant that came from the state Department of Ag, Food and Ag, for building the map based on some of the remote sensing imagery that we've gotten. And it's essentially just to initiate the mapping for the portion of the river from basically Satakoy up to the county line, since it is the Ventura County weed management area. But the important thing is that just gets us initiated into that mapping program. And it's the upper watershed IRWM that will be starting maybe the end of this year or first thing 2021, which will be an expanded version of doing the same, the combination of doing surveys for Arundo in the upper watershed and down to about Piru, and building that into a mapping exercise, but also with a prioritization scheme so that we can evaluate where can we do Arundo control essentially right away and get the biggest bang for the buck. And in the long run, maybe doing larger scale, eventually removal from the entire watershed. But the idea is to to develop redevelop the strategic plan that was done along with Stillwater Sciences about 8 years ago. Update that with current information and then have a prioritization scheme for the whole watershed eventually. So it mixes several things together. That's why it sounds a little bit confusing, but we're trying to piecemeal different funding sources for a larger scheme, basically. Is that kind of clear?
Yeah, that's what I was hoping. Thank you.
Are there any other committee updates or announcements? Questions? If not, we'll go to the Santa. Go ahead.
Kat has a comment that she has an update about Hansen, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. I want to update everyone. I think it was last month I presented on the Hansen Nature Preserve of the Nature Conservancy's project in Santa Paula. And since that time, we've had some delays due to COVID and due to permitting. So our new open date is 2023. So just wanted to get that out there in case anyone's sharing that out to the public. So thanks.
By the way, Laura, should I talk about the other Hansen at the same time here now?
Sure, I think this is the place to do any of our unagendized items.
Okay, well, so I just wanted to make mention that first of all, some of you may have seen, I think it's in this morning's Ventura Star, they have an article about the cooperative extension station there, the Hansen Agricultural Research and Extension Center on Briggs Road outside of Santa Paula. That has just in the last couple of weeks gone up for sale. Cooperative Extension wants to have an expanded facility and they're looking to purchase a place in the Oxnard Camarillo area. However, they haven't found their replacement location now. So we're actually trying to generate support and interest in financial basis for actually purchasing that land, continuing the extension research. There are a lot of really important research projects already going on there. And with the Faulkner House, which is really one of the main reasons why UC wants to sell that place, because the house takes a lot of effort for maintenance, and because it's on the historic registry, it has a lot of restrictions on how they can do that. So just to let everybody know, we're trying to put together a proposal for a consortium of nonprofits, both agricultural oriented ones and conservation oriented ones, that would essentially share the Faulkner House, run it as an umbrella nonprofit that would be dedicated to conservation and agricultural research for the future in the valley there. So without going into too much detail on that yet, because it's kind of up in the air, I just wanted to make that announcement that we are building this consortium. And Cooperative Extension is very interested in participating in something like this. So it could be really exciting. And there are also some organic research groups like Rodale. Organic Research Institute is working with the McGrath family, and they're interested in maybe tying into this. David White with the Center for Regenerative Agriculture is also very interested. And so it really represents a potential for the single location having all these different organizations cooperating and essentially looking for synergies to improve communication and how we can do programs that benefit the valley for the future. So stay tuned.
And then I have one short announcement, if there are any others then, or update. I just wanted to share that, didn't mention it last time we met, but September was Coastal Cleanup Month. Coastal Cleanup Day this year was transitioned into an entire month of encouraging individuals to go out in their own neighborhoods and do a cleanup. So we didn't have any large scale events, and I know a number of our organizations, both our cities and our environmental organizations usually participate in hosting a cleanup site. So that wasn't able to happen in our normal fashion this year, but I just wanted to share as the Coastal Cleanup Day coordinator for Ventura County that we actually, I feel, should be very proud about our participation level in Ventura County. We usually have around 3,000 participants, and this year we had 1,050. And I know it's 1/3 of the normal, but I actually was quite surprised and also really proud of that participation level. And those are just the individuals that took it upon themselves to go out with their family or the people they maybe in their household and collect trash and report it using a free app by the Ocean Conservancy. So I imagine there was a lot of other people that also participated that just did not report their cleanup using the app. And just for reference, I know LA County only had about 100 more participants than us. So, and we outshine Santa Barbara County as well quite a bit. So I just wanted to share that little bit of good news that our public and community members are very interested in participating in this kind of activism. So.
That's huge. Very exciting about that. Okay, so no other committee comments? If not, we want to start with our groundwater updates for the Santa Clara. Who would like to start?
Chair Lund, I can provide a GSA update for the Fillmore and Piru Basin GSA if you would like.
That would be fabulous. Thank you.
Fillmore Piru Basin GSA is working on the hardest part of the groundwater sustainability planning process and trying to set the sustainable management criteria. I think our board and our stakeholders have found that that's a difficult thing, trying to look into the future and predict droughts and to try to set minimum thresholds and objectives. So we're right in the thick of that. We do have a workshop special board meeting coming up on November 4th. So if anybody's interested in participating in that difficult discussion, then that's a good one to participate in. United Water has been finishing update of the groundwater model, which you will hear a little bit later update in this meeting. But that's a tool that we're hoping to use to do our forward modeling. There's been some very good coordination with the Santa Clarita Valley GSA that's upstream, trying to make sure that all the assumptions for things that happen at the junction between basins are planned for and understood. And the GSA has also been participating in the Water Talks events that have resumed in a virtual format. So we had one last night for the Fillmore area, and we were competing against the World Series, and the Dodgers lost, and the Water Talks event lost, I think, because Dodgers fans were watching the game and not participating. But that is recorded, and it's going to be available to watch later. And I think that's it.
Chair Long, this is Rick from the upper Santa Clara. I can give an update too.
Please do.
The SCV GSA held a stakeholder advisory committee meeting yesterday where we presented our draft groundwater budget for the basin. It was well attended, and we got good feedback on the presentation. Our next step is going to be to have a larger public workshop on November 4th, which is also the date of your meeting, Tony. So that's going well. The water budget effort was a big effort, a lot of new modeling. We've also started the groundwater model peer review process, and we're thankful that Dr. Sun from United Water is participating as one of our experts, and that is up and going now. And that's it for the update for us.
Any others? We have Mound or anyone?
Connor.
Hey.
Oh, and Brian's here too.
Yeah.
I saw him.
Go ahead, Brian.
Good morning. I wasn't anticipating being here, but glad to be here. And must admit, I just had bad scheduling last 6 months or so. I haven't been able to attend, and Laura's been pinging me, and so here we are. Am I able to share my screen? I wanted to show a few items. So,
Yes, you should be able. Oh, yep.
okay. Are you seeing a flow chart?
Yeah.
Okay. So like Tony mentioned, for Fillmore Piru, Mound Basin is kind of at in the same stage of the GSP development process, turning our attention to focus on developing what are called the sustainable management criteria. And Mound GSA has developed a deliberate process for developing the SMCs, because in my experience, there's can be a fair amount of complexity and confusion for stakeholders on what comprises this SMCs in the GSP and how decisions are going to be made. So this flow chart, I'm not going to go through the details, but it's available on our website. And you can see it starts at the high level with our sustainability goal. And then we're going to go through a deliberate process with stakeholder input to decide what the undesirable conditions in our basin are that we want to prevent from happening. And then once we've agreed on those undesirable conditions, we're going to go through and couple that policy level work with the technical work to determine how we measure that in the field with the measurable thresholds, minimum thresholds and measurable objectives that are required to be included in the plan. And that'll bring in the data and modeling. We're also relying on United's groundwater model for our GSP process, like the other two GSAs. So that's where the modeling will help us determine how to translate the undesirable results into measurable things that we can go out in the field and measure. After that, we're not going to say the criteria are done, we're going to take a look at the projects and management actions that are required to achieve those objectives. And then and only then will we ask if the sustainable management criteria are acceptable. And the reason we want to do that is we don't want to set criteria that aren't achievable or aren't achievable within the economic realities of what our basin can handle. So that's the process we're in. Our board has adopted a sustainability goal, so we're done with this first step. And now we're starting to focus on defining those significant and unreasonable effects that we want to avoid in our basin. So stay tuned. Lots of work coming forward with our GSA, like the others, to make these difficult and challenging decisions. If you're interested in the latest status, we do publish, we're trying to publish a quarterly newsletter. You should be able to see an example of that on the screen here. This is our latest newsletter from July. So it just goes through what we've been doing. And in this case, we're highlighting the fact that we issued some draft sections of the GSP, our hydrogeologic conceptual model and groundwater conditions. And the reason we issued that up front is because that's foundational information for developing the policy of the undesirable results and then going ahead and making those minimum thresholds. So we felt it was very important that the stakeholders have this foundational technical information available to them in a digestible and readable and accessible format, so that as we go through the SMC process, they can understand how the basin works, they can understand the historical conditions, and they can put the discussions about undesirable results in perspective with available information about the basin. So if you go to our website, you can download those draft sections of the GSP and take a look. We are also accepting comments on the preliminary sections so that we can make changes and updates before we publish a draft GSP. And I think with that, that kind of gets you caught up on where we're at. We're looking to have a workshop probably early in the new year to go over where we're at on the sustainable management criteria. But of course, we're having discussions at every board meeting, and we encourage everybody who's interested to participate in every way that they can. So thank you for the opportunity to give an update on the basin.
Thank you, Brian. Really appreciate it. I think that's it. Is there anyone else that I would like to talk about? Go ahead,
Supervisor
AJ.
Long, Remsen. I'll give a very brief update on Fox Canyon because I don't see Arnie raising his hand. As you all know, Fox Canyon was the first agency to submit their GSPs to the state almost a year ago, and an allocation ordinance has been passed, and the agency has a facilitator who's running a very robust stakeholder process to look at things like ramp down projects and so forth. Those are all open to the public. You can go to the Fox Canyon GMA website, and there's a link there if you want to participate. So just a brief update.
Thank
Thank
you very much.
I was wearing my county hat today.
We wear many hats, let me tell you. Okay, so
Chair Long,
yes, please.
this is Lynn Rodriguez. I do have a quick update on the grant that we submitted last week for the Department of Conservation Sigma Watershed Coordinator, which was submitted by the RCD. Jamie Whiteford submitted that. And if I could share my screen, Laura, I'm just going to, if I can find my document on here. This is just a quick summary. We had this conversation as a group. We've been talking about this grant probably for 6 months now. We did end up getting an application together for that. Very competitive grant. There's only 1.5 million available for the entire state and $300,000 maximum grant award. So if you do the math, that would be potentially as few as 5 grants awarded. But we put together a proposal for, we're calling it the Regional Watershed Resiliency Coordination Program for the Greater Ventura area, which includes our partners in the upper watershed. So 8 GSAs are part of this area. and it's a 3-year grant term. We did submit an application for the entire $300,000 maximum. RCD would use this funding to hire a full-time coordinator that would probably spend the beginning part of their time focused on research and, looking at grant availability while the GSAs are all completing their GSPs. It was, I think, very important to the GSAs that we not create confusion for their stakeholders and do any sort of overlapping activity. The idea for the RCD would be that person would then stay on after the life of the grant to do additional work in watershed and groundwater projects along the lines of what they do now, what the RCD does. We should find out our results on December 15th. We have no idea, or I have no idea, how many other areas applied for this funding. And thank you to the those that provided a letter of support, including this committee, the Watersheds Coalition of Ventura County. I think the Ventura River Watershed Council also wrote a letter of support, and the Fox Canyon GMA. Sorry, I just said GMA, but I meant the Fox Canyon GMA. So thank you to those entities that supported this effort. And we're excited to see if we're successful. And if we are, we'll be working closely with each of the watershed coordinators and the watershed groups moving forward with the effort, which would be very much integrated in with the IRWM program, as well as working with all the GSAs. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that update. Okay, moving on, we're doing good on time. Felicia Groundwater Recharge Release 2019 Summary and Status Report for 2020 release. I believe Murray is going to be doing this one from United.
Yes, I am.
Perfect.
Okay, let me share screens here, see how hopefully this goes okay. Okay, is everyone seeing a PowerPoint presentation up? Yep, okay, excellent. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to be covering the 2019 and the 2020 conservation releases from Lake Piru. We're currently in our release in 2020, so I don't have final numbers, so I'm going to be talking mostly about the 2019 release, but they're actually very similar in size and in condition. So pretty much if I talk about 2019, it pretty much carries over to 2020 this year that's currently going on. So just some background. Lake Piru is capable of holding about 82,000 acre feet. We built it in 1955. It was the first dam ever built for groundwater recharge, actually. So and so it was kind of novel in that idea. It's been very successful ever since. Almost every year we do a conservation release from here. Only during this last drought and a couple other droughts before did we ever miss a year where we haven't not done a release. I think everyone's pretty much familiar with this. Basically, just showing our district boundaries. We are within Ventura County, shown here in the yellow dash line, and we're predominantly within the Santa Clara River watershed. Zooming in a little bit, again, our United's district boundaries are shown in the green dash line now. Goes up to LA County. Here's Lake Piru that I'll be talking about our release from, and the Freeman diversion is down here. During this release, by the way, it goes down the river. It's about one marathon, really. It's 26 miles to get from there down to the Freeman diversion. But the idea is that we recharge the groundwater basins on its way too. So we have the Piru Basin, Fillmore Basin, the Santa Paula Basin that it crosses before we take some of that water or the remaining water out at the Freeman diversion and then spread it down into the Oxnard forebay. So as for water years, these last 2 years, they were actually, 2019 was above normal in precipitation, about 130% above normal. And last year was just a little bit under normal in terms of precip. And that carried over also to, oh wait, here, let me change my, let Let me get the laser pointer. Okay, and that also carried over in terms of runoff. This graph here is showing the total runoff at the Freeman diversion for the last 70 some odd years, with 2005 being the highest. And some of the lowest years, as you can see, were just of recent. 2015, 16, and 18 were amongst the lowest in terms of total runoff at the Freeman diversion. So these last 2 years, 2020 was a little below normal, and then and 2019 was above normal. So, but before I talk about our release from Lake Piru, in conjunction with that, we do another release out of Castaic, and it's part of what we call the downstream water users group. And so we have an agreement with DWR that they hold the what we call the flood flows coming into Castaic Lake, and then we release that in a controlled manner down the river, and where we allow that to percolate into the groundwater basins. Now, the lion's share of it does make it across the LA County line, and almost all of it ends up percolating into the upper reaches of the Piru Basin right here. So, for example, in 2019, we did a release of 19,000 acre feet out of Castaic Lake. Barely a trickle of it, if you're familiar with Torrey Bridge right here, this is near the confluence of the Piru Creek coming out. Barely a trickle of it actually made it over that point. Almost all of the 19,000 acre feet percolated right upstream of that into the Piru Basin. So, but that's a good thing. And what happens is that kind of sets us up pretty well for doing a release out of the Piru, in that we already have higher groundwater levels in here to release across. This last year, we had 4,400 acre feet of flood flows. So again, it is highly variable. Some years we have a lot, some years we have none. It depends how it rains up there pretty much. So looking at the, here, wait, I gotta move. Okay, there we go. This is looking at the Lake Piru storage since 1990. So as you can see, the whole idea of Lake Piru is that we draw it down in a controlled manner where we allow that water to benefit the basins downstream, and it allows for storage of the runoff season, and we end up capturing that water so it doesn't rush out to the ocean. And then again, we do those releases, and we do that every year. So this is what Lake Piru looks like every single year. It goes up during the rainy season, and then we draw it down usually it's during September, October, and November. So basically the yield of the dam is by us fluctuating this substantially. As you can see, during the drought, we didn't have a whole lot to work with right here. From 2012 it started, but we fortunately still had a lot of water in the river or in the lake, and we did a nice size release in 2012, but then after that, we hardly got any inflows until just recently. 2017, we got some inflows, but a lot of this was purchased Article 21 water, which I'll talk about in just a minute. And then 2019 did really well, and then here's 2020. So talking about 2019 and what actually was in our lake that we released, we started out at kind of a minimum pool. It was actually a little below our normal minimum pool of 11,700 acre feet. We had natural inflows of about 38,000 acre feet that we held back, but we also secured Article 21 water of about 15,000 acre feet. Now that water is part of the state water project, and what happens is when all the needs are met by all the state water contractors, there's sometimes additional water, and that becomes available to all the state water contractors. And this time, we were very fortunate that it was available. We were able to take it from Pyramid, release it down from Pyramid down to Lake Piru, and hold it in our lake down there. Now this water is literally, it's free. You don't have to pay anything for the water, but you'd have to pay for the conveyance of it. And I think this time it came out to about $190 for the conveyance cost, which is extremely cheap for water right now. So fortunately that water was secured. And in addition, we also have a portion of our state water that we had purchased. So that's how much water we had to work with in 2019. We've had a little bit less this year, but so last year we did a release of 38,000 acre feet. And we didn't go down to as far down as to our minimum pool, but that's a portion of what we're releasing this year right now. So let's take a look at what happens in our release. So this is a picture taken of the Santa Clara River, standing on Torrey Bridge before the release right here. And this is right after we start the release. As you can see, it's a sandy, very wide channel. And the distance to groundwater sometimes is, you know, actually more than 100 feet in this area. And this condition is probably 30 feet down or something like that, or maybe even a little bit more. So when we start this release, this area is capable, Piru Basin is capable of percolating a lot of that water that we do release. And that's okay, but over time, what happens is looking again from the same point, but from kind of an aerial right here. Here it is very wide, and it was percolating a lot of water in this upper reach, but eventually as time goes on, we start cutting channels. The sand begins to move down and it becomes more confined. And then therefore, when the surface area is reduced, less is percolating there, and we're able to get more of that water downstream further. So this is the exact same flow rate. I think it was flowing at about 350 CFS. And again, this is the same flow rate here. And I've even seen it more confined than that up here after our release is ended. And again, looking at the Piru Basin here, this is kind of in an area where we don't have the rising groundwater, where it tends to be very dry. This is the start of the release. It was going to be fanning out. It fans out way over to here. It is much wider. And then once we get into the rising groundwater areas, of course, then it becomes much more confined because you have a lot more riparian to keep it into confined channels right here. So we monitor these releases, and we have been for, well, actually ever since we've started releasing from the dam in the 1950s, we monitor what happens to this water. And so we actually go out and we have people stream gauge at different points, but for the most part, we look at the rising groundwater or right upstream of the rising groundwater areas. And so we measure exactly how much is percolating into each basin, into the Piru Basin, the Fillmore Basin, and then the Santa Paula Basin here, and then how much we're diverting at the Freeman diversion. So we'll go out sometimes, usually about twice a week, to monitor these releases to figure out where that water is going. And so in 2019, of the 38,000 acre feet that we released, about 10,000 of it ended up in the Piru Basin. Almost 6,000 in the Fillmore, and 3,600 in the Santa Paula Basin, and we diverted 17,000 here, where we spread a portion of it, which I'll talk about in a minute, and others went out to surface water deliveries. This year, currently, we're going to see a higher percentage going into the Piru Basin, and a lower percentage making its way down here. In part, we're doing a lower level release, where it allows more of it to be percolating up here, and I'll talk about why in a minute. So not only do we monitor the river flow, the flows going across each basin, we also look at the groundwater levels. So these are all wells that we maintain transducers in, and along the riverbed here. And so what I'm going to do is create a cross section right here, going across here, and we're going to kind of look at the basins in a side view here. And it looks like this. So right here is basically your riverbed elevation is going up. Here you got Piru, Hopper, Fillmore, or Sespe Creek and Fillmore right here. And here, this would be, of course, the Fillmore Basin, and then this depression right in here would be the Piru Basin. So the black bottom line is kind of at the lowest the water levels were during this past drought right here. So that's kind of what the groundwater elevations look like in this basin compared to the river bed right up here. In 2019, we started out a little above our lowest point. During the rainfall season, during the wet season, oh, well, first of all, let me mention also is we do measure rising groundwater, even not just during our release, but all throughout the year also. And there was no rising groundwater between the Piru and Fillmore, near where the hatchery is. There was no rising groundwater during that time. Downstream of that, popping out of basically the Fillmore Basin was about 220 acre feet per month. All right. So fast forwarding now to the rainy season, it filled up our basins a little bit. We had about a 22-foot increase in the Piru Basin and about a 17-foot increase in the Fillmore Basin due to the rainy season. Then right after the rainy season, we did that Castaic release. Remember where we released 19,000 acre feet, about 17,000 of it went into the Piru Basin and started filling that up. So that actually increased water levels right around here of about 40 feet, quite a substantial increase. And as a result, now because you can see the groundwater gradients are getting steeper, more water is popping out or coming out of the Piru Basin, where we had about 660 acre feet per month coming out of the Piru Basin. And we actually saw a substantial increase after this point of about 1,400 acre feet coming out of the Fillmore Basin right there. Okay, so right after the Castaic release, we did our release from Lake Piru. Now that increased water levels kind of a little bit further down, but we saw about another 30-foot increase in water levels near Hopper Creek in that whole area, and saw a slight increase in the Fillmore Basin. Already this one was getting fairly full. As a result, after that, we were monitoring the rising groundwater, and we're seeing about 2,500 acre feet per month now discharging out of the Piru Basin and going into the Fillmore Basin. And again, this is because, you know, groundwater gradients are steeper. This is almost full. And so these waters, these are basically like, you know, teacups kind of set on their side. They're just draining out now after we filled that up. After the release, everything kind of subsided a little. And of course, we'll start seeing a decrease in the amount of rising groundwater as this discharges. This is for 2019. We don't have the data yet, of course, for 2020, but I imagine it's going to look very, very similar when we're done with that. Let's see. So focusing now down to the Freeman diversion. And so basically what we do here, and I think everyone's pretty well familiar with it, is we recharge the groundwater basins by recharging in the forebay right here. So this light green area is the forebay. Here's our recharge facilities, our Satakoy facility, Noble Basins, and then our El Rio facility right there. And again, looking at a cross section right here, basically what we do, I just want to show it's just a very simple thing. You know, as you know, we have water levels down here that can and sometimes go below sea level, which ends up promoting seawater intrusion. United's goal, and it always has been since really the 1920s, we've been diverting and recharging water, is basically we put this water into the ground, we try to stage up the forebay as much as possible, increase water levels in this area, which helps increase pressure and water, additional water going down into both the upper and to a lesser extent, the lower aquifer system. And thereby, as much as possible, we can push that water. If we can keep the forebay full, we could keep that water pushed out, the seawater intrusion pushed out. And that's basically what United does down here. So that being said, last year, or 2019 and 2020, again, this is going to be a very similar story, this graph right here represents the total river flow at the Freeman diversion for 2019. Now, United, for probably at least 20 years, we had received a water right and a permit that allowed us to divert in a certain manner and provide bypass flows for steelhead migration. And our diversions would have looked something like this, where we're allowed to divert up to 375 cubic feet per second. And then there were additional bypass flows for fish in here. So basically, if you're looking at the total yellow area, that would have been United's diversions. It would have been about 57,000 acre feet. But we've had further restrictions on how we're allowed to divert and how much we need to bypass for steelhead migration. And so our actual diversions now, compared to what we were used to doing, actually look like this. The blue right here were our actual diversions. So you can see the difference between the yellow and the blue now is what we used to be able to divert versus what we're diverting currently. As you know, we're going through an HCP process where we're trying to come up with something that works for both diversions and bypass flows, and it'll likely be somewhere in the middle of this right now. But in the meantime, basically what I wanted to show is we're kind of in a, what I was, yes, we're out of a drought, but we're still kind of in a regulatory drought because we're not able to divert nearly what we were used to and what everyone was used to down here. As a result of these, well, partly the drought and also partly our not being able to divert as much water, I want to show you some water levels here. 2011, this is exactly what we want to see in terms of water levels. It was about 130 near our spreading grounds, which is right near the bottom of our spreading grounds. We see the water kind of radiating out from our spreading grounds out into the Oxnard Plain, where we see water levels above the seawater levels along the coast. Again, that's what we'd like to see. 2019, even though the rainfall was 130% of normal in spring, it still didn't look good. We were -20 groundwater elevation in the upper basins right here. Sea level was actually somewhere way above here's the 101, it was way above the 101 in between our two spreading facilities was seawater level. And of course, that's not what we want to see. So needless to say, our conservation releases, and the reason why we're purchasing the Article 21 water is to help mitigate some of this situation right here. And so our releases have been predominantly focused on getting the water down to the Freeman diversion as a result. 2019, we ended up putting about 9,600 acre feet into our Sataquai facility right here, about 6,500 acre feet into our El Rio facility, and we sent out some water to our surface water deliveries out to the PTP system in the Pleasant Valley County Water District. This year, it's going to look a little different in that a whole lot more water is going out to our surface water deliveries and more to the El Rio facility and less up here. But again, we don't have the final numbers on that because we're in the middle of doing it. So let's see. So last year, we also had some issues, operational issues, in that the way we used to conduct during a release, actually, let me fast forward one right here, is when during our release, sands start migrating down. The bed load of the river starts migrating down. And what we used to do is we'd open up this gate right here and flush the sands out and go downstream. Well, there's concerns that there would be a steelhead in this reach, and if we did that, we could potentially kill a steelhead or a rainbow or omicus, basically, down here because there is no connection all the way down to the ocean at this point in time. So in 2019, we tried to not do any sort of flushing, and as a result, a lot of algae built up, which became a maintenance nightmare, but also we began to bring in the bed load of sand. As you can see, what happened here is we brought in 3 feet of sand into this area, and it basically happened over the weekend, over one weekend. This year, we have a solution, or we had a solution, and it's a dredge right here. And this is what it looks like. And I'll just briefly talk about what we did there. So the idea was, this is actually this year right now, the sands were coming in right here. And if we just kept doing this, it would eventually would have made its way in here. So what we did was we developed an exclusion area, kind of a fish-free exclusion area, right upstream of our diversion intake, where we put up the nets, would stretch this net down across, and then we dredged that area out of the sands. So we need to do this we're doing this currently, where we do this about once a week. We dredge all this sand that has been coming in during the release, and then we can lift the fish exclusion areas out, and then we continue diverting through this. But this was a way so that we didn't have to do a flush, and there wouldn't be any potential for taking of steelhead at this time. So again, this takes a lot of man hours and a lot of people. But you know, we're getting the release down, and it's been a good release so far. It's definitely we've seen some nice increases in water levels upstream and downstream in deliveries too. So for 2019, if you were to look at our entire year of recharge that we did, it was basically between all the basins, we're looking at probably right around 75,000 acre feet of artificial recharge that we benefited both Piru, Fillmore, and then down here below the Freeman diversion, you know, almost 40,000 total. So I think that's it for my part. And I can take any questions if anybody has any.
Does anyone have any questions, or are there anything in the chat, Laura?
Nothing in the chat right now, no questions. I was just curious, how many hours does it take to do the dredging? About, you said you did.
This is, yeah, it's taking a full 8 hours. It was taking us almost 2 days to start out with, but they're figuring it out a lot better. So it's a full 8 hours, but we have, I think, 4 fisheries people out there at any time when they're doing this, and then probably 3 O&M. You know, compared to what we used to do, where it took one guy to go up there, you know, flip a switch on the flushing channel gate and flush it all out in 1 hour. This is, you know, of course, it's a lot of man hours to be able to do this.
I would just say great job. I did fly over Lake Piru on Thursday, and it was quite low, but I knew what was going on. So with the coagus mussels and the different flux of the flow of the water to make sure we reduce that population as great as possible. I just really appreciate all the work you guys are doing, because making water flow isn't as simple as it sounds.
Right. Very good. I don't go up to the lake at this time of year. I'm not very popular up there because we draw it down so much. But yeah, and it's, you know, the water is where it needs to be now, right? It's not meant to keep a lake full up there. It's meant to be in the ground.
No, but it was nice to see it from a bird's eye view of all that was going on. It's pretty special. Okay, if there's no further questions, Marie, thank you so much.
There's a question in the chat, actually.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, there's
Go ahead.
Jean Peck wanted to ask where the sand is disposed of that's dredged.
Okay, so right now we're just putting it in our facilities. Where we talked to Fish and Wildlife, and they said next year they like this operation that we're doing. Next year we're going to look at putting it back down in the river again. You know, this really is a drop in the bucket of sand compared to what the Santa Clara River produces. You know, but still, if we can get it back in the river, that's probably a good thing to have the sands in there. And if they want us to put all the silt we collect at the Freeman diversion too back in the river, we'd be glad to do that too.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up question, with all the silt that's removed from the settling basins then after.
Yeah, so right now we're putting it in some old gravel mining pits, and we're just kind of putting it in various places that we have at our facility. It would be nice to be able to put it back into the river. After all, it was, you know, it came from there, but that is something we're planning to work on here in the near future.
Okay. And I think we just want to thank you. I think a lot of us are impressed with the graphics and animations in your presentation. So
thank you.
Hats off to you, as Bert said there in the comments. There's a lot. There's one more question, actually, real quick. Kyle's asked if any steelhead have been spotted during the dredging.
At the very start, there was an omicus, and that was the one that did. Unfortunately, it was right during that heat wave where we got up to whatever it was. I don't know. It was about 115 at my house, and I forgot what the river got up to, but it was definitely extremely high, and that one he wasn't in the actual dredging area, but he was in our facility, and that one didn't make it through that heat wave. But as for actual ones in this facility and when we're doing this, no, we haven't had any.
Yeah, Murray, that water temperature in the lower ponds in the Santa Clara River got up to over 90 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
It was a really bad place to be if you're in Omicus in the middle of summer.
Okay, any other questions? I didn't see anything pop up in chat. Can't see everybody waving their hands, so. All right, thank you, Murray. Excellent job, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next item is the Santa Clara River Watershed Groundwater Model Expansion Report. We have Dr. Sun. Hello, and he's sharing his screen. Go ahead whenever you'd like.
Okay, thank you. And I trust you can hear me and also see my slides.
Yes.
Okay, good. So first, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present my work on groundwater model development. I'd like to start my presentation with the brief history on United Water's groundwater model development. United Water has been interested in getting a regional model since 1990s. We collaborated with UHS to develop a 2-layer model in 1998. The model didn't meet our need, so we hired a consultant to further improve the model, but the model is still not good enough. So in 2012, United Water hired a modeler who was brave enough to take on the task to build this regional model from scratch. And in 2013, we started the new model development. That's a 13-layer model. In the first few years, excuse me, in the first few years, it was difficult because of the data gap and the conceptual model. We need more clarification. We spent a little bit of time to resolve those. Once we resolved it in 2015, we were making good progress. So we released the first model that's in 18, and you can see on the left, the figure here is in blue. It basically covered the coastal plain, okay? And last year, we expand the conceptual model into the river basin, Santa Paula, Fillmore, Piru. And this year, we complete the numerical model expansion in August. Okay, next slide. And during our model expansion, we noticed that there is a change in geology. We noticed that there is a series of faults shown here in red. On the river basin side, the geology is different than the coastal plain here. To elaborate a little bit more clearly, I'm showing here is the geological unit that we identified. On the left is coastal basins. We have upper aquifer system, lower aquifer system, and people may notice the Fox Canyon aquifer was quite well known. And this is coastal basin. We identified 13 layers. We noticed Fox Canyon aquifer didn't really extend into river basins. We did pick up something that's equivalent is Wainimi aquifer, and on the other side in river basin is Saugus formation, and it has more detailed sublayers. So we end up with 10 layers in river basins, while in the coastal basin, there are 13 layers, okay? And how do we know that? We collect more than 600 e-logs. And here you can see, this is e-log vertically. This is a signature. So we line them up to form, we call cross-section. And we look at the signature, we could tell it's aquifer or equitar. And those are the building blocks that we use for numerical models, okay? Of course, we didn't just do one cross-section. We did many, and this is Piru Basin, Fillmore, and all these color line, green, orange, brown, these are all cross-section we made and form the building block for numerical model. Similarly, this is a really good example cross-section to show. This is coastal basin cross-section. This is e-log. if you look at this Wainimi aquifer, you can see this signature, this is ELOC signature, they are similar. So we can tell, okay, this is related, this is one unit. And that's how we determine the building block. It's aquifer, equitar, and with all this information, that will become the foundation for a numerical model. And similarly, we have done many cross-section to cover the whole model domain. Okay, and so that our numerical model, when we build it up based on this information, it will resemble the aquifer equitar that we identified. Okay, and in addition to ELOCs, we also collected water level wells that's close to 900, and also the pumping wells that's over 1600 pumping wells data. And here we use grid size is 2000 feet. We try smaller grids and it takes the CPU time is too long. So we settle for 2000 foot grid that the computation time is reasonable that we can use for calibration. And it's cover more than 380 square miles, and you can see here. And all these colored dots are water level wells, pumping wells, and ELOC well location. Okay. In addition to well records, we also collect surface water record, particularly stream flow record, and Santa Clara River and its tributary. We collect the stream flow at gauge location, at county line, and different tributaries. And we have releases from our lake. And we have record on all the diversions that we know along SCR. And let me show you with this. So this one, this is SCR here, county line somewhere here. And we have major tributary, Pyro Creek, Sespe, Santa Paula, and we have other creek too. And you can see this Freeman diversion, this little red line, High Turner, Canyon irrigation. We have smaller one, Camulus, Isola, and there are many small ones here. So we have all these information collected for the model. And I didn't show it here. We also have Cayacas Creek and its tributary here that I didn't show it in this figure. And these information are used for the model. Okay. So the way we build a model is, okay, we collect this vast amount of data. We implemented all of them into the numerical model. Then we adjust the parameters like conductivities so that the model would mimic the observed water level data. And you can see on the right here, this is the close to 900 water level wells I mentioned earlier. Is scattered across the whole region. Now these are all the water level data we need to honor. Okay. And here is a really, I call technical spec of our model. And we build this model with an open source software developed by USGS. It's MAFlow NWT. Originally, we use monthly time step. And based on the feedback from our hydrologist, and we recognize SCR is very flashy. The stream flow change, really fast. Monthly stress period is not sufficient. So we originally for earlier model 2018 is using monthly. Now we switch to daily to better simulate, particularly for Santa Clara River. Okay. And the model basically include all the major processes from pumping, stream flow, diversion, surface water, recharge, ET. These are all included in the model. And the calibration we use is 31 years from 85 to 2015. Okay. I'd like to go a little bit detail for our presentation is the surface water recharge. The model actually go to recognize different surface water recharge, the source. If it's precipitation, we look at it, okay, depending on the how much rainfall, where it land, is it landing on ag land, or it's urban, undeveloped. We have different recharge rate. And all these recharge rate, for example, agricultural land, we are looking at 0 to 30%, depending on how much rain. And these are consistent with the literature we review. Okay, and urban is 5%. And that's for the source of water is precipitation. And if it's, say, surface water application, agricultural usage, MMI usage, it's a different rate that our model actually track the usage of the water. And if it's ag water for irrigation, for farming, we know the leaching rate. They have to leaching requirement is about 20 to 25%. We use that as the guide for recharge rate. If it's MMI in urban area, it's about 5%. Okay. And our model basically really track the water, where it comes from, and what kind of recharge rate should be in our process. And for example, also we consider ET along stream channel, wetland, and we have a time varying ET in the summer, in the winter, they are different. And remember the grid size we use is 2,000 foot grid. So the number here is really an average of this 2,000 by 2,000 grid size. It's not really reflecting any specific plant or vegetation. Okay. And here is our calibration result I'm showing here. And these are we call hydrograph, okay? And the blue dots are water level measurement. Orange line are simulated water level. And you can see the model capture the data pretty well. But I really want you to see is, if you compare the water level in, say, Piru, Fillmore, and Santa Paula, you may notice the water level fluctuate differently. They are not like in the same system and fluctuate in a similar way, right? And if you look at the coastal plain from Mount Basin well to Oxnard Plain, they behave differently. Inland well here, 7J2, in the lower aquifer unit is different. Northern PV experience mounding due to the water from East Las Posas. We have we call mounding. This well, 12R1, is in Forebay. That's near our spreading ground activities that is influenced by our spreading ground recharge activities. And it's different. And all these water levels are different, behave differently in different regions. But our model could simulate all of them just fine, okay? And in addition to the groundwater data, we also want to check the surface water. And there is really no stream gauge between Piru and Forebay, but we do have good information related to our conservation releases. When United Water released water from the lake, our staff collected detailed information in terms of how much being perked in the basins, what is the stream flow at the basin boundary. Our staff collect those information, and those good data is used here for our calibration. So our model would calibrate and check if the model simulate the release is good. And on the figure here, you see the right here is Piru Basin. This is Fillmore on the left. And we know how much water being per our staff data. And it's in orange line here for each year, you can see, okay? And the blue line are the simulated models percoloration. And you can see they are well correlated. And of course, there are some outliers. As Marie mentioned earlier, that during our releases, not every release is the same. It just happened one year, maybe have some outliers. So there are some outliers are okay. But most importantly is the correlation overall, and they are good. And also we check the stream flow at basin boundary. On the right here is the Piru-Fillmore Basin boundary. And this is observed against the stream flow. If they are the same, they would, lie on this solid line. But in reality, it's just not going to happen. But we do want to see correlation is good, which we do have. Similarly, this is on the left here is the stream flow between Fillmore and Santa Paula. The correlation is good too, okay? And I like to point out that during our model development, our model has been reviewed extensively, internally and externally. And we are fortunate to have expert panel that we could recruit. That was, in my opinion, is the best model in the country. And for those you are not, familiar with groundwater model, if you are a ground model, you know that, Dr. Penday, Jim Rumbaugh, they are well recognized in the country, that they are well received. So we are fortunate to have them to review our model. And in addition, that our earlier model, 2018 model, was also reviewed by a Stanford professor and also being scrutinized in litigation. And so far, I have not heard that there's any comment related to how, if there's any technical deficiency in our model. So in my opinion, our model is really battle tested. Okay, next one, let me see, okay. And recently we finished the model expansion, and our expert panel reviewed the model, and they concluded that the model calibration is very good. And I think it's important to emphasize there are different level of calibration. One could say, the calibration is acceptable, okay? Or a little bit better would be the calibration is good. And we are in the category of very good. And that would put us, that kind of really speak volume about the quality of our model. And also, if you remember the hydrograph I shown earlier, it's really well calibrated. Okay. And so we have completed the calibration, the expansion in August. This month and last month, we were collecting the new data for validation. And so the calibration is from 85 to 2015. And the validation we are working on right now is to 2016 to 2019. We are using a new set of data to check the model, if the model is good or not, and it's using a new set, it's called validation. And we are completed the validation by the end of this month. And that's, I'm currently working on the analysis right now. And in the near future, you'll be hearing some modeling on GSP simulation. And I just want to point out that GSP simulation is really a stress test, assuming the future in certain way, and want to test if the basin is sustainable or not. It's just like, if you remember in the Great Depression, that the Treasury Department would put stress tests on bank to see if their capital is sufficient. And the GSP is like that. It's a stress test to see the groundwater resources is sustainable or not, okay? And here I'd like to share with you the validation result, as I'm working on it right now. I'm gonna show you one well from each basin to show you the result. This is one well from Piru, one from Fillmore. And this is hydrograph that I mentioned before. You know, the blue dots are measurement, orange line are simulated value. On the left is calibration result from 85 to 2015. The calibration is good. On the right is validation from 2016 to 2019. And they are good too, if you look at the data. And then if you look at one well from Santa Paula and one from Mount, the calibration is okay. Validation, they are not bad either. Okay. And one well from Oxnard Basin, one from Pleasant Valley. The calibration is really good. Okay. And then if you look at the validation, they are really good. Particularly if you look at the last two data points for Oxnard Basin well here. Okay. If you like the last three in Pleasant Valley, I don't think you can ask more than this. This is really right on. Just like SpaceX rocket landing on, you know, the drone ships. Okay. So right now I'm completing the validation analysis in this month, and we'll finish by the end of this month, and next month we'll be ready to apply the model to support the local GSA, Mount Basin and Fillmore and Piru Basin for their GSP study. Of course, we have some other work to do, producing the documentation, do some more analysis. And also we have another project that's important, that's brackish water project in Oxnard Plain that we'll be pursuing that too. And that wraps up my presentation. And if there is any question, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sun. There's a lot to discuss in that, and just to absorb, I appreciate the information you do for the Fillmore and Piru groundwater sustainability too. Laura, there's some chats and some questions. So Laura, do you want to read the first one?
Sure. So first question we have is from George is, why was the Freeman diversion vicinity excluded in the groundwater model? And also second question, does your transpiration model account for precipitation harvest from fog drip off trees?
Okay, so the question, let me show you first, is the Freeman diversion wasn't excluded out. So if I show you this figure, so originally this is 2080 model. The model stopped here, but once in the 2020 model, we just finished in August, it's the complete model. So this, even though there's a fault line separating the geology, but the whole thing is one model. So Freeman diversion is part of the model. And let me see what's the question on the ET. Let me.
Does it account for fog drip from trees?
Okay, no. It's important to recognize this is a regional model. So a grid size of 2,000 foot by 2,000 foot, try to get really an average effect. And it's probably not going to be that detailed to be that detailed that you asked. But the model did try to account for the overall ET
Mark, can
loss.
you check on that?
Sorry, I couldn't hear that, but I think okay, next question, trying to get back to the comments. Wondering if the model accounts for illegal diversions at all.
Excellent question. That if we know there is some diversion and we have record, we will incorporate. But if there is any activity that we don't know, we don't have data, it's not really for me personally say to implement something, I don't have a good data. But if we have it, we'll try to address it and we'll try to incorporate. And also it's important to recognize that we build this model in-house. So we do look forward to continue to improve the model. As long as we have new data saying, okay, someone tell me, hey, I have some activity here with this record. We'll go to collect and review, and then we want to implement as much as possible. But if there's something that's, you say illegal or something we are not aware of, and this is something we are not able to do it at this time.
Okay. And what about, there's also a question if the model from Lynn Planbeck, if the model accounts for reductions, I'm assuming in precipitation from climate change.
Okay.
Or if there's a way to do that with the model.
And if you remember, I said that this is what we did so far is calibration, right? It's using what we know, the data, to calibrate, build a model. This tool is based on known data. For the climate change in the future, that for the GSP, we do have, I think the DWR does prescribe some weather condition that address the climate change. And for the GSP simulation, I think those factors will be considered.
Okay. No, there's a question from Lynn. I was wondering if you wanted to just unmute and ask any other questions.
Sure. Sorry, it's kind of a long question. Thank you, Dr. Sun, for your presentation on the model. It's been great to watch this whole process develop over the last few years. And so you've talked about how the model will be used for GSP development and management of groundwater over time, and of course for United for releases and other things you do. Is there a use for the model for others? So I know it may be a little complicated to use, so I'm just wondering if there's a way for others to perhaps benefit from the information being produced in the model, either by using the model or by looking at the results of the model, summaries of the findings.
Okay, so we do, United Water do team up with local entities like cities and other agencies to support their need. And we'll be happy to provide that support, that if you reach out to United Water, what we did like with City of Ventura and Callejas Water District, there are some project they are interested to know, try to use the model to simulate, to evaluate their project. We do collaborate with local agency to do the model for them. And as to say, if you want to look at the model, try to understand better, we will release documentation. And also if you reach out to us, we are very, very supportive and will be interested to share what we know with you.
Thank you very much.
I think there was some follow-up questions from George, but I was going to ask if you, George, if you just wanted to, if you wanted to ask, unmute and ask yourself, or if you'd like me to read them.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank the author of the model, Mr. Sun. Thank you very much for your efforts. It looks like you put in a tremendous amount of effort. One concern that I and others have going forward is that we may undervalue the Santa Clara River riparian forest in ways that are very problematic in the future. I believe we are currently undervaluing the capability of the Santa Clara River forest to both fix carbon, decrease the urban heat island effects that are present now and will intensify in the future. And then there's also conservation values. There's even ways that the riparian forest can add more water to this groundwater basin through fog drip, precipitation increase, and mulching surfaces that would otherwise evaporate water and concentrate salt at the soil surface. It has the potential to help ag farmers by fostering beneficial insect populations and pollinators. So I am asking questions related to the Santa Clara River in that spirit. Can we please make sure that we're including the possible value of trees and not just looking at trees as a net minus for water? Does that make sense?
I think I kind of understand your point, and if you, but I'm not sure as a, what I'm working on is a regional groundwater model, and as to how much a regional model with a 2,000 foot grid would address what you said, I'm not very certain. But I appreciate your comment, and this is something I definitely would take a deeper look at what you said to see if there's a systematic way to address your concern. And I appreciate your comment, but at this point right now, I'm not sure the model has that kind of fine scale, that kind of resolution to address what you just said. But I'd be happy to take a look in the future.
Thank you. May I make a clarifying point, please? So I believe the regional big picture perspective that you're proposing here can lead to solutions similar to what we saw in Los Angeles and the LA River over the last 30 to 50 years. And I believe that the key thing I'm asking is that if we can please make sure that there's a way within this regional model to look at changes in land use. For example, if you look at the Oxnard Plain, if you look at the Santa Clara River riparian forest, right now that's a certain kind of land cover. And if you change that land cover to, say, a more dense forest, then does this model give us the capability to look at additional water harvested through fog drip or some of these other benefits? Thank you for listening to my concerns. I appreciate it.
Okay. Just in terms of land use change, that our model is capable of addressing that. In fact, my model here did consider the land use change from 85 to 2015, because every 6 years we have, I have data information on land use released by, I think is by the state government. So the model, when we track how much surface water recharge, I do track each grid size, 2,000 by 2,000 foot grid size, how much is ag, how much is urban. I do track those information in the process. So in theory that for in the future, if we know there's any land use change, these could be incorporated into the model.
On that note, I wonder, is there a way then, I'm just thinking about land use changes in the coming years. I know like the Newhall Ranch, it'd be interesting to see. I don't know if that's something that you're thinking of and looking at in the future with the for groundwater recharge, and how much if that's going to be making an impact. Is that something you already have looked at all?
Well, I'm not an urban planner, so I cannot say, okay, what would happen in the future. But if I have the information telling me, okay, in 2030, 2040, this piece of land will become, a community, or it's going to be a reservation area. Those kind of information will be incorporated into the model without problem.
Okay. And George asked also just if there's a way, it would be helpful to know where in the Santa Clara River floodplain are the best places for recharge, or where it would have the highest recharge. And that's probably something you're already aware of, I would think, with a lot of the work that United does.
Yeah, it's a good place to, just like Orange County, you know, they use Santa Ana River for recharge purpose. But in Santa Clara River, we, United Water, you know, work with the regulatory agency, try to work on the conservation water. And I think Marie would be better to answer the question. I think there are some regulatory, you know, process need to go through, not just, okay, let's go out and little pump for population. I don't think that's not going to happen that way.
Is this model, I had a question, if this model going to be, I mean, it's just such an amazing tool for the watershed, and I could see there's clearly like interest in, you know, climate predictions and riparian habitat, land use changes. I could even see a interest in building off of it for maybe even water quality or pollutant, you know, discharge and land uses. I don't know, I just see a lot of potential uses. It's such a great resource. Will this be something that's available for, you know, others to build on? I'm just, if you could speak to that some, or.
Yeah, you could. We lay out this model is really laid out a foundation. You know, it's a flow model.
Yeah.
That basically capture the flow dynamic. And with that, then if you say you are interested in certain water quality issue, you could use this model as the foundation to create a contaminant transport model.
Mm-hmm.
Could be a zoom scale, a smaller scale, or it's a regional scale. And I have done this before when I was a consultant, and this is a typical practice that people will use, starting from the regional model. If someone that usually is USGS, build a regional model, and consultant would use it as the starting point, build a contaminant transport model, a smaller one. It's kind of built on top of it. And that's a typical way. And our model here as a regional model would definitely be suitable for that purpose too.
That's
and
great.
you know, United Water is a public agency, so we are happy to collaborate with anyone who's interested in you know, modeling work.
Yeah, Laura, that really is, from United's management point of view, that's the whole purpose of wanting to build a regional model. And the goal is to match line with the Santa Clarita Valley model that's been built. So we can model these things, and the power is to analyze things in the future. So as Dr. Sun said, you know, as we have projects that are being proposed, as we have futures that are being analyzed, like various climate change factors, growth assumptions, those are all the things that are very that a powerful tool like this can help us analyze. So that's exactly why we have that model. And you know, I think Dr. Sen, even he mentioned the coastal brackish water project. That's one where I believe in the vicinity of that project, you're going with a finer grid to analyze some very specific concerns out there. So exactly what this whole group has been talking about is what this is for. And of course, we can't do all of them at one time. But and right now in the next few months is probably the emphasis is on helping the GSAs. But following that time, I think United is very willing and wanting to help analyze some of these things going into the future.
Tony, can I add to that? This is Lynn. That's a great comment. This model, a phase of this model development was funded through a planning grant from the IRWM program. And all along it was intended I think by the group, the IRWM oversight group, to be a tool that we can all use in figuring out projects and collaborating on, you know, either regional scale or local scale efforts, you know, based on the model. So thank you for bringing that up. And it really is one of the more important things developed with some help from the IRWM program in a while. And like you said, it's facilitated project development already.
Yes. So more to come, more good stuff to analyze.
Great. Thank you. I'm excited about the future with this and all the interesting things that will come out of the model.
Exactly. And I appreciate, I know everyone looks at the time, but we want to really make sure we talked about this issue. It's very sensitive for all of us. And this is not the only time we'll be hearing from this. We will be talking about this more and more. I know with the Fillmore Piru ground GSA, we'll be talking about this. So Dr. Sun, thank you for making sure we do have peer review and feedback from our stakeholders and everybody, because that's crucial for this process. And we've learned that with the Fox Canyon GMA and everything about how important our modeling is. So thank you for that continued dedication and the time in the presentation today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to last items. Laura stated that they will go quickly. So hint, hint, Arnie. We have our tentative draft regional phase 1 MS4 permit perspectives. So Arnie, it's all you.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Long. I am sharing my screen. Hope that's working for everybody.
Yes.
All right, so tentative draft regional permit. I'm going to give a little bit about permit background and what's in the next permit, and then which they call watershed management plans, and what challenges we see in Ventura County, and then hopefully how everybody can get engaged. Brief permit history, and this is very high level. And so 1994 was our first permit, and the compliance standard then was maximum extent practicable. And the focus was really just on educating the public and businesses and set a new standard. Next permit for Ventura County, these are 5-year permits, but you can see they take a lot longer than 5 years to get, was a ramp up in all the requirements. Receiving water monitoring was added, reporting was ramped up as well. In 2009 was a significant change in permitting in Ventura County because land development requirements, new development, redevelopment had to capture and treat stormwater. And outfall monitoring, what is actually running off of the city's MS4s was being monitored, and TMDLs were included. This was the first time, I think, anywhere in the state that TMDLs were included in a permit. The next permit is a regional permit with Los Angeles County, and it's built off of the 2012 permit, which has watershed management plans. This picture of Ventura County and LA County, that's the Los Angeles region. Red is developed. You can see LA County is very different from Ventura County, and the brown is agriculture. We have, to no surprise to anybody here, lots of agriculture. What they call watershed management plans work differently in Los Angeles as they are going to in Ventura County. And the permit also has final TMDL requirements. This is when the TMDLs become enforceable. The draft tentative is out. It's huge. It's 750 plus pages. Comment deadline has been extended. They are due December 7th. And adoption anticipated in the spring with an effective date in July. So they are moving forward. So watershed management plans, the way they work in Los Angeles is they are very capital improvement focused. It's you identify what projects are going to get you in compliance, and then you build a plan to build them. You address your TMDLs and your 303D listings. That's any impairment to the water body caused by a pollutant, and other known pollutants. There might be pollutants coming off an MS4 that aren't in the 303D list, so you address them in your watershed management plan. You require some modeling, the reasonable assurance analysis, to get to the point where you're confident you're going to meet these TMDLs and your 303D listings. And for Los Angeles, they are in compliance while implementing the plan. That means the actions they take constitute compliance. with receiving water limits and with the interim TMDLs, but not final TMDLs. And I'll get into why that's very important. That compliance is as enforceable metrics. It's not a safe harbor. So it's very, very important to say that there are metrics that can be measured and enforced upon on the MS4s, on the cities. There's great advantages to the watershed management plan. The receiving water limit compliance, again, not a safe harbor, but it's good to have some surety that you can meet those. It gives a lot of control to the MS4s to identify what programs and projects they want to implement, and so they are appropriate for those entities. The predictability is, I can't say that's understated. Every permit renewal is a huge ramp up in requirements, and every permit renewal is a huge effort to get a permit that's going to work. This should provide a lot more predictability in the future in terms of what the programs are going to be and what the budgets are going to be, and scheduling when the projects are built, over what time frame, for everything except for the TMDLs. And that's really our biggest challenge. Final TMDL deadlines have not changed. And so I'll get into some of the details there, but they become enforceable when the final TMDL is effective. We've already spent some money and effort on developing TMDL implementation plans, and not exactly starting over, but we have to create another plan. And funding for capital improvement projects and their maintenance is expensive. The biggest issue for Ventura County is the scale is not really at the watershed scale. It's focused on the MS4s. For Los Angeles County, where it's all concrete and parking lots, it works a little better, but here where our MS4s aren't integrated. So with Santa Clara River, I think this 4% is just for the lower. I don't think it goes up much more if you take the upper Santa Clara River. So it's not very urbanized. You know, the impact of these cities, it's hard to imagine them really moving the needle much in the receiving water in a storm. And the TMDLs we have are chloride, nitrogen compounds, which has been delisted. That means it's no longer a problem in the receiving water. And the big one for us is the bacteria indicators, because the final deadline is coming up in just a few years, and that must be complied with. And 2029 really isn't that far away. So our problem with the TMDL schedules is they are somewhat arbitrary. There was no real planning effort in identifying what projects were needed or what effort is needed to get into compliance by 2023 or 2029. And available funding was not considered. The projects are expensive, maintenance is expensive. The deadlines didn't consider what it would take to get the money to pay for them. And then compliance is met through water quality-based effluent limits. Now the EPA allows the plan implementation to be compliance. Basically, the actions taken or the volume captured or the land area treated, some metrics can be used to show compliance with a final TMDL. The LA Regional Water Quality Control Board wants numeric effluent limits, and those are very problematic, not just because it's a number where we don't want to be held to a standard. It's very difficult to show compliance with a numeric limit for an MS4, for a storm drain system. So here we got a couple of cities, just a cartoon. City A got the funding, built some infiltration basins, and was able to infiltrate 2/3 of their MS4 discharges to the river. That center one is still discharging. It's still going to have a concentration of pollutants, and that's the big challenge. Water quality-based effluent limits are by concentration. It's going to show no improvements because that one doesn't have any BMPs, as they call them, any control measures on it. So City B is in the same situation, even though half of its runoff through one outfall is being infiltrated. All those pollutants are being removed. What doesn't get bypassed, or what bypasses that control measure, goes to the receiving water at the same concentration. It's going to have the same milligrams per liter as it did when it left the city, and no improvement is going to be shown. So it's going to be very difficult for a city to show compliance at an outfall with a numeric limit. Also, as a challenge, it's very focused on the MS4 outfalls. It doesn't look at the watershed, what will benefit the watershed. It doesn't look at what other opportunities there are to remove pollutants or make the situation better for the watershed. This again shows it's agriculture and open space are discharging to the rivers. There may be opportunities there, and what complicates it more is a city might mingle, cities runoff might mingle with agriculture, and definitely most of our cities are built with open space in the hills above them, and they drain through the cities, and that creates a complication for treating stormwater and definitely a complication for meeting numeric limits. So multi-benefit projects can help a watershed, and it's not a surprise to this group. Groundwater replenishment, flood protection, recreation habitat, all of those are benefits that can happen at watershed scale projects. And they are easier to get the public, not easier, the public supports these efforts more than they do just MS4 treatment alone. And why is that important? Is public support is going to be needed because these things are expensive, and currently stormwater programs are being funded through general funds throughout the county. This is countywide, and they're very dependent on general funds right now. And if you're aware, COVID has hit the general funds hard in these cities. And so we, as MS4 permittees, really want to be able to have a permit that's right for Ventura County, one that can support partnerships where we can do better for the watershed, do better for habitat recreation, flood control, water resources. And so these are just some of the opportunities layered on the map. Sorry, I don't have the colors here. Yellow is land conservancies, green are GSAs. So our request to the regional board, and I got the logo up there, Ventura Countywide, because I'm speaking for all 10 cities in the county right now. What we've been telling the regional board is we need a permit that is right for Ventura County, one that understands our cities aren't interconnected, one that understands that multi-benefit projects and large regional projects are better for Ventura County. We definitely need a sufficient planning timeline, which means revising the TMDL implementation schedules, because 2023 and 2029 are very close, and bacteria is a unique challenge to treat and capture. And it definitely needs to consider the available funding we have in Ventura. And to put it a different way, it needs to support our ability to get the funds needed to do what's right for Ventura County. We've been asking them for compliance options that allow us to achieve success. Risk-based objectives to bacteria instead of just looking at the E. coli number, who's using the water, how often, are there human sources of bacteria, or are we really looking at animal sources? It poses entirely different risks. And then BMP-based compliance, meaning the actions taken, the water captured, the amount of land use or land area captured, the actions taken by cities, a metric that we can know we can meet, where the water quality based effluent limits at the outfalls are just going to be too difficult to prove that we've done what we needed to do. And with that, short and sweet, I'm happy to answer any questions.
There's one question right now in the chat. Georgie asked, what is the most effective pathway to ensure that ag land uses remove their pollutants before it leaves their property? That aren't ag landowners better equipped in terms of land availability than commercial properties?
So the agriculture is under a conditional waiver. Essentially, it's a bit of marketing. It's a permit. They have requirements they have to meet under the conditional waiver, and they should be controlling those. They do have a better advantage at having less impervious surface, less concrete, less asphalt, to allow them to infiltrate the stormwater. And we see that as a potential partner. If we can if we look at the pollutant loading as a whole in a watershed instead of multiple of point sources, there are economies of scale and advantages with larger projects. They're much more cost effective to maintain. So that's what we're pushing for.
I might also add just quickly that in comparison with urban runoff, it can be much more challenging to do the kind of point source control and managing or preventing pollution from, you know, thousands of people and potential discharges that could be happening versus agriculture. I'm just saying that might have a lot more control over what is actually being used on their land and discharging from their land in some cases as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. People are messy. Controlling an agricultural discharges, there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of challenges with whatever's happening within that multitude of people and different activities where agriculture is it's a single activity, generally under single management.
There's
a couple of our permittees in Ventura County on the call, and Heather Miranda, who's very familiar with the 2012 LA permit as well. Curious if you have any questions or comments, definitely.
There's a second question in the chat right now. Also, this is a good question. The question is also, what is the most effective pathway to achieve publicly funded joint use, recharge, recreation, and stormwater treatment for first flush stormwater projects? So the multi-benefit, what's the effective pathway for, I guess, like a multi-benefit project?
Yeah, the way I've been seeing it and telling the regional board what we need something the public's going to support. Without public support, we can't get the funding to do much. And so what does the public want? They want open space. They want recreation and habitat. They want water resources. Do they want clean beaches? Yes. Do they see that as a priority when we have the cleanest beaches already in the state? It's a difficult story to tell. So what I've been pushing the regional board for is, let's get a permit that's right for Ventura County, that works at the watershed scale that the public will support.
So can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I just to add on to what you said, Arnie, about what the ag community is doing through the ag waiver. Just wanted to call everybody's attention to the fact that the work of the ag waiver being conducted by the Farm Bureau, they have, just for those that aren't familiar with it, and Kat, thank you, Kat, for posting the link to their site. They have, you know, a very comprehensive effort underway that works with growers through training and implementation of best management practices, and in conjunction with work at the RCD for reducing irrigation demand and improving irrigation efficiency. All of that is contributing to reductions in runoff and poor quality. So it's an incredibly intensive effort that's been going on for a number of years, and growers have been receiving some funding from Proposition 84 funded grants and other grants from the regional board to do this work. So very extensive effort going on in this area already.
Yeah, definitely. Ag has not gotten a free pass.
All right. Thank you so much, Arnie. I really do appreciate all the good work everyone's doing. If that's it for it, we can move on to the next item, which is our watershed coordinator updates. Laura.
Okay, so I'll make this quick. I'll make it actually very quick. How about, we have a meeting planned for December 10th. So I know that we usually meet on the fourth Thursday, but because of holidays, our next meeting will be December 10th. And I'm looking for agenda items. So if you have anything that's coming up, please let me know for that. And then also, I've sent out a notice for people on the invasive weed task force to try to coordinate our next meeting. We haven't met in a while, so if you are on that list or if you're interested in joining that group, please let me know if you're interested in joining. And if you already are, please fill out the doodle poll I sent so we can have that meeting. I've just been busy working on a lot of disadvantaged community involvement program meetings, and as well as Lynn and I were going to talk a little bit about that and give an update. I'm also finishing off a report for it's really actually from this it's not just ended anymore, but this last fiscal year, the report from Watershed Coordinator, so the things that were accomplished, and I'll be posting that over the next month, as well as sending out to our funding partners the invoices with that as well. So I'll leave it at that. Lynn, I don't know, do you want to talk about the DAC program and where we're at with that?
Yeah, just very briefly. I don't know if somebody already mentioned today, but we had one of our final remaining outreach events for underserved communities through our Prop 1 DACI grant last night, the city of Fillmore, and I guess that was Tony that mentioned that, and it was recorded. We have another event tonight. The El Rio and Island Acres communities are combined into one event, and that will be held at 7 o'clock. And if anybody's interested, they can email Laura or I, and we can send you the link, although she already did send a link out, I believe, to the group. So that will help us wrap up the second task for outreach and engagement. And then we're already starting the next task, which is the community surveys, the needs assessments that are being done through a community survey and also a institutional survey. Some of you will be receiving notice or requests to be part of an institutional survey for your agency. So look for that. It's an interview process with questions that have been vetted by our task force, and our consultants, Cal State University, have been working on that. And then once we have some results from that, we'll be able to meaningfully move into the final phase, which is determining where we need technical assistance and project development for our projects to serve our underserved communities. And as a reminder, there's 9 of them in our county. Also, there's going to be a mailer going out right after the election to all of those 9 community members to their homes. Given the challenge of COVID and not being able to have in-person interaction, we had to resort to other strategies, phone calls or social media or direct mail. So a direct mail newsletter has been designed and includes a hard copy of a survey that can be mailed back for community members. And then in addition to that, the CSU designed website, Water Talks, has a survey that you can complete online.
I just posted the link to the online survey in the chat.
Great. And I see that Brian asked a question about the community of Montalvo. The only area of Ventura City that was included as a DAC is over on the Avenue. So no, there will not be a targeted event for the Montalvo area. But Brian, if you want to talk offline more about how we can reach out to that community, yeah, get a hold of me or Laura. So with all of these efforts, we're really hoping to get more public awareness of what we're trying to accomplish and the funding that's available, not only through the IRWM grant, but other grants that are targeting projects related to human right to water and underserved communities for water quality, water supply, and other purposes. So it's exciting to be moving along on this project. We just had a meeting of our task force yesterday, which includes the Upper Santa Clara River and the Greater LA. And we are going to be requesting an extension to the grant in order to allow for us to complete the work. The grant agreement currently expires in December of this year. So we need more time. Obviously, COVID was a part of that. And the other real reason for this taking longer is just that we're such a massively large funding area, and the work, especially in the GLAC region, is very challenging to accomplish. So excited to be moving ahead with that.
Can I just add that the survey online, I don't recall if you said this, Lynn, but the survey period is going to be open at least until March of next year. So I think that you might start hearing from us more about pushing the survey out, especially the online. Paper one probably after the election and more after the holidays. So that was part of the reason we wanted to make sure it's available on the website into next year, to get us through those periods of distraction.
Yeah. So if anybody has any more questions, I know we're running out of time about the DACI grant and the process, please feel free to reach out to Laura or I as your task force representatives. I would like to just make a quick update on the next item. I mean, not the next item, another WCVC item, which is just a follow-up announcement that some of you, or most of you already know, that the Department of Water Resources did issue their final findings on the round 1 Prop 1 implementation grant, and they stuck with their original draft recommendation. The last time we spoke, you probably heard that Greater LA had pushed for a change in that recommendation, but DWR did not decide to take that. They took it under advisement, but they didn't do that. So fortunately, we have $11.58 million coming in to our region, and there's projects across the county for that. Five projects will be facilitated by that funding. So we'll be moving into the grant agreement phase, and the project proponents, some of you are on this call, will be working with Christine McCaffrey, who is Callegas is going to be the grant administrator. I see that Rick and Heather are still on, Rick Vasilopoulos. There's, I think, 10.6 million coming to the Upper Santa Clara, and the same amount to GLAC that we received, 11.58. So it sort of looks like a three-way split, and I don't think that's precedent setting necessarily for the next round, but the GLAC region is concerned that that is going to be the way the state will move in the next one. So there will be a lot of discussion about the next PSP and how projects are scored and how the state ranks our three regions as we compete with one another. So, and then related back to the DACI grant with an extension to our grant agreement, we're likely, and for a lot of other reasons, we're likely to see round 2 for the implementation grant getting pushed further out in the future than we might have thought. So we might not be looking at a PSP release until late 2021, perhaps early 2022, and then an application much later in 2022. So we'll be doing a local call for projects next year to update our plan. And we'll have a sense of what we think the PSP will include in it. But now is the time. We have a year now, probably a good year, to work together to collaborate on things that have been talked about on this call, you know, the best management practices and projects that can be done through the stormwater permit implementation and all the many other things that we have already on our list and new ideas for addressing our local challenges. So looking forward to a good discussion at the watershed level about what we want to emphasize for the next round of funding. That's all I have.
Thanks, Lynn.
All right, there's just such great work going on with everybody. I really appreciate everyone's contributions and engaging, especially at this meeting. I know we have all these Zoom meetings to pull you from everything, but the focus on this is really important. So thank you, Lynn and Laura, for engaging with everybody and making sure we have all the right information, and we're all working hard. So thank you. This meeting is now adjourned. Enjoy the rest of your day, and you'll hear more from Laura and Lynn on email. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, guys, along.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.